All right, a couple last things to do now here is to actually label in your nodes, and we're going to now do this by actually going ahead and making a block with an attribute on it, and then of course making a view box for every one of these nodes. So we're going to do these both. They're both similar. Their view boxes are often brought in as blocks, so we're going to now go ahead and make a block. And we generally want to learn to make blocks, though you're going to see pretty quickly you'll learn how to do different than that on layer 0. So you're going to define on layer 0, and what's your block going to be? Well, basically it's going to be a point. All right, and you can do this in the block editor. I think it's sometimes nicer to do it on the plane. And then in addition to that, an attribute. So we're going to define an attribute. We're going to call it the node number. The prompt is, what is the node? And very often give it a default of something you're going to see that you didn't get it correctly. So I'm going to hit here. We have a text height probably a little bit high there for what we want. We probably might want to do with 2. We might want to go with 1. You can change that later. That's a little bit small, a little bit large. So you can once again left click, spacebar, 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 scale of 0.5, about half as big. And now you're going to define that by saying a minus B for block. Enter the block line node underscore block, perhaps, however you're going to name that. Base point is going to be, of course, the node of that. And you're going to select your objects, which now means you can go in effect back and end up replacing each of these, but we'll just do it on the same layer. So we're going to go to the layer you want to receive it, and so this of course will be geometry, perhaps nodes, and we're just going to say I for insert. We're going to pull down what we want. We're going to put it at the right spot, which would be at this point. It's at the end point. The rotation is 0, and then what is the node? Well, this is A. And then you can do the same thing. You can do any number of ways. You can do an array. You could go back and do it, but we'll just do it a couple ways here. I for insert, each individual case, node block. Where you're going to put it, you're going to put that at the node. There you go. And that is B. We can copy. If we're good, we can copy this from the node to 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 the node. And then we can do something like ATT DD ATTE is one way to do it. You can just double click on it. We're going to make that C in caps. Make that D in caps, etc. So all kinds of different ways to nest and do this. So I'm going to leave the rest for you all. I'm going to finally go ahead and make the phi box and do something very similar to the phi box. The phi box, if you remember, is a box. So I can do a rectangle, once again, probably putting it on layer 0. Clicking here, keeping my ortho off, and saying, in fact, at phi, which is 1.618034, comma 1. Once again, I can now put a piece of an attribute there, at ATT define attribute, whatever you want to do, look up attribute. This is going to be the view name. Prompt is what is the view, and we're going to put, for instance, now ZZZ, maybe YYY, something you want to put in here that will tell you, and we're going to make this much smaller. We'll make this 0.1. It'll tell you, right, and we can put this in or out. It's not going to generally plot. We'll put the view name there. Again, minus B. Block name. We'll be having a general standard block, unit, phi, block, right, with attributes if you wanted to add that. Insertion base point might be actually the middle of it. I'm just going to go ahead and use the endpoint here. Grab my objects here and here. Now, of course, if I want to put those boxes in there, I should go to the correct layer, which would be the view layer, and then do I for insert, unit phi block, tell it where I want it. In this case, well, that might be good, but I might want to right away left click spacebar, 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 scale it up twice. Probably on a box like this, you probably would have been better off doing it in the center. Now, of course, you can copy around. I'll just copy a few. Copy this. If you're trying to keep it consistent, you can go from the node here, and I think your node box is still set. Of course, you can do the ATTE. These are all not necessary to do all of these steps, but very often, if you're trying to organize for cooperation, very often they might be worthwhile doing. All right, that said, once again, why do you do this type of stuff? Well, we're going to make some views. It's going to be much easier at this point if we go ahead and say, by gosh, I want to isolate a layer. So I think we can isolate a layer. Very often by this, I can isolate the view layer. And now when I see this, I can now say minus V window A from the endpoint there to the endpoint there, minus V window B from the endpoint to the endpoint. And realistically, you'll realize very often for views like this, it's just going to follow along with the node anyway, so you can be able about doing it other ways. Minus V for W for window, C from the endpoint there to the endpoint there, etc., etc. Remembering now, finally, the last bit was the kind of starting to think about how you can lay out layering, and so let's go back and turn everything on. You remember all on, but you also need to know how to do a layer, grab everything, and remember to do a lot of this from the model, not from the paper. You're going to grab everything and turn them all on and thaw everything. If you think about it, you've actually got double. You've got points and nodes, so you could do right now Q select. And you could grab all of your points and get rid of them. Of course, I never did put all my blocks in the right spot. But you can just start to do things like now, well, I like this layer state, but without perhaps the views, so I might do this. Layer, I'm going to turn off. Generally set your current layer maybe at 0 and go ahead and freeze that out. Hit this here. And right away, you don't really want maybe the radial arms there, so you again go through and you freeze perhaps the radial arms. Now, if you go back, do a little bit of an undo here, you realize, oh, we had members. That's good. So the members are on. But we don't want the radial arm, so you're freezing. You're really thinking about them of this plotting. You're saying, okay, that's something I want. And I'm going to now, perhaps, I'm going to do LMan or Layer Manager, and I'm going to save it. We're going to say a new one, and this is just geometry, perhaps. Just geometry. This kind of pre-planning what your layer states are going to look like, even to the point of now thinking about what the plot style is. I'm going to hit close here, and I'm going to go ahead and now turn everything on. I'm going to start turning some other things off. I'm going to turn off the members, and I'm going to turn off that, and I'm actually going to maybe even turn off the nodes. But what I'm going to turn back on, as I said before, is I'm going to go ahead and turn back on the comps radial. And I might like that look with some additional things on it. I think we're missing nothing there. We've got a couple of bits. You can learn how to do things like making sure list window. You can learn how to do things like right click, display order, bring to front, so right away. And all kinds of stuff. I look at this and I realize I really screwed up this drafting, didn't I? So now I'm all wrong. but I'm not going to recut the drafting. So at any point in time, right, I'm not all wrong. I thought I was wrong because this is not the drafting of the actual structure. If I want to go ahead and see maybe underneath the base structure, I probably don't want everything. I might just want to turn on the spine. So when I turn that on, I get something that makes a little bit more sense. So at that point, you're ready to plot. You've set up layer states. You're good to go. That's 30 minutes. That's a lot. But that's kind of the thing when you're given time to draft. Think about that kind of level. That wouldn't be a whiz kid. That would be a long whiz kid. Kind of a final exam. Thanks for listening.